King the Wildfire is one of the most ruthless pirates in the entire world. He fights with no honor and has no problem murdering his own crewmates. King has shown comparable levels of power to people like Marco and Zoro, but how strong is King the Wildfire? Lunarians used to be known as a tribe of gods while they dwelled on top of the Red Line. According to Whitebeard, there used to exist a kingdom of gods on the Red Line continent long before Mary Jawal was ever there. And this may have some connections to God Valley and why Garp was willing to protect the celestial dragons, but that's just headcanon for now. Moving on, Lunarians possess the ability to ignite their bodies and manipulate fire they create. They also have incredible resistance to physical harm. However, it appears that at certain points, a Lunarian's signature durability is lost when the flame burning on their back goes out, but they will gain extra speed in exchange. This durability is unlike anything we've ever seen in the world of One Piece. Just to be clear, Zoro was landing direct attacks on a base form King, and they were doing absolutely nothing. This is the same Zoro that would force Kaido to dodge, and King is laughing off Zoro's attacks like it's nothing. If we look back at King's flashback, we can see that he was experimented on along with Kaido in order to gain their lineage factors. Vegapunk created a copy of Kaido's Devil Fruit and used King's DNA to create the Seraphim. And we heard from Queen that Lunarian's toughness allows them to thrive in any natural environment, which is why Vegapunk used Lunarian DNA to create the Seraphim. He wants to create the most powerful beings in the history of mankind. So with durability like this, the Seraphim will become completely unstoppable. However, as I mentioned before, this durability does have a weakness, so there is a way to get past his defense. We don't really know much about King, but from his appearance we can tell he is dressed a lot like Shiryu from Impo Down, and he has been with Kaido since he was a teenager. He's by far the strongest beast pirate from rank and portrayal. Some fans argue that he is relative to Queen as they are shown arguing and fighting all the time, and their bounties are pretty close, but judging from their fighting styles and the fact that beast pirates are meritocracy, it is safe to say King is significantly more powerful than Queen. Now this is a good time to get into some of his feats, starting off with the Marco situation. So if we look over the entire 2v1 scenario, we can actually see that King does most of the work, and the anime puts this into perspective as well. In chapter 1000, after throwing Zoro into Roof Piece, Marco was able to grab hold of both King and Queen and stop them from delaying Zoro. In chapter 1004, we see him talking to Bao Huang, and he says he has his hands full, which means at this moment, Queen was fighting Marco by himself and probably losing if I'm being honest. But nonetheless, we do know that for a moment during this fight, Marco was switching off with his opponents. And in 1005, we see Marco fighting just King, which is also shown during the anime. Now in chapter 1006, Queen is trying to kill Hyogoro and Marco hits him in the neck and King cuts off one of his wings, and then Marco counters with Bluebird and another close quarters attack to King's face. Then as Queen tries to get to Marco, Marco outspeeds him and kicks him into a building, and Queen gets up and it's clear that Queen has actually taken a little bit of damage. And as for King, Marco only hit King while his flames were on, so it's safe to say he didn't take any damage at all. A lot of people have misrepresented this fight between Marco, King, and Queen. Marco was definitely outpacing them at some points, but King is doing most of the work, and even Sanji was able to hold them off 2v1, but ultimately, just like Marco, he got put down. Now Queen and Chopper continue to fight in 1014, and in 1015, Sanji saves Chopper and slams King into a building, and we can see Marco reacting to Sanji fighting Queen while he's still in this fight with King. So again, this is another situation where we can see that Sanji is fighting Queen while Marco fights King alone. In chapter 1017 and 1019, King and Marco are still fighting while Sanji is speaking to Queen about the Mads research team. And finally in chapter 1022, we see that Marco and Sanji have both been defeated. Sanji is still able to fight, whereas Marco is clearly out of power and stamina. So in comparison to King, it's easy to see he has more durability and endurance than Marco. Then as King tries to kill Zoro, Marco uses the last of his energy to block the attack, and then he hands the floor off to Zoro and Sanji. Now I already made a Zoro vs King analysis video, so go watch that for a full breakdown. But to summarize this fight, Zoro figures out a way to bypass King's defense and gets a Haki Bloom during the fight. King's durability and endurance rapidly declined while his speed increased. And now to be honest, Zoro has some of the best feats in the entire arc, so King never really had a chance from the start, but he's still one of the strongest commanders in the series. To put his strength into even better perspective, we have Sanji in his raid suit, who is considerably more powerful than Page 1, which means he would be somewhere around the level of the Toby Roppo at this point in the story. And this version of Sanji uses the same move to use against Page 1, and King blocks it with his hand like it was nothing, which means characters like the Toby Roppo would have absolutely no chance of taking down King. After losing to Zoro, many people have started to downplay King's strength, but he is not to be overlooked. He was strong enough to withstand multiple attacks from King of Hell Zoro, and this version of Zoro would scale higher than Rooftop Zoro. King the Wildfire is honestly a pretty interesting fighter. His durability is practically unrivaled, which is probably why Vegapunk chose to use his DNA for the Seraphim. King is definitely deserving of his rank as Kaido's first commander, but unfortunately he had to go against the world's future strongest swordsman. I think it's safe to say King is an average first commander level character and might one day be as powerful as Kaido himself. He's only 27 years old, which means he's 32 years younger than Kaido, so who knows how much potential King actually has. But drop a comment down below if you guys agree with this, and drop a comment down below if you think King will become stronger than Kaido in the future. I'll see you guys guys in the next video. Peace.